When I was 14, my dad sat me down at the edge of his garage workbench, wiped the grease from his hands, and said something I never forgot. Alex, if you ever want to build something that lasts, treat your work like it's your reputation, with care, consistency, and silence. That stuck with me. Not the kind of quote you plaster on an Instagram reel, but the kind that embeds itself under your skin and shows up 20 years later when you're hammering away at your dream with no one clapping. Now I'm 33, and for the past 6 years, I've been quietly building a logistics company from the ground up. The kind of business that doesn't look sexy on paper, but makes your phone buzz at 2 a.m. because a driver's delayed in Spokane and the client expects delivery at sunrise. No funding rounds. No TikTok updates. Just me, a laptop, a phone, and eventually, a warehouse. And I loved it. Still do. But if you asked my ex-wife, she'd probably tell you I loved it too much. Her name's Tessa. We met at a New Year's Eve party in Brooklyn when I was still doing consulting work, long before I had the guts, or the capital, to go solo. She was bold in a way I wasn't. Quick-witted, sharp-tongued, had a laugh that turned heads, and a confidence that could either charm a room or burn it down. I was immediately drawn in. She said I made her feel anchored, like I was the calm in a room full of showboats. I thought that was a compliment. Maybe it was. For a while, things were great at first. I was working long hours, sure, but we made time. Tessa loved that I had ambition, until ambition started taking up more space than she was comfortable with. At first it was small comments. Harmless, almost flirty. You treat that startup like it's your mistress. Don't forget you've got a real wife at home. I'd laugh, brush it off, bring her flowers on Tuesdays, make her coffee before my 6 a.m. Zooms. I thought I was balancing it well enough. She still smiled when I walked in. Still curled up next to me on the couch, even if I had to pause the movie to take a call. Then came the passive digs. Guess I'll go to dinner alone again. Let me know if your schedule ever opens up for, I don't know, your actual marriage. I started feeling guilty for things that used to make her proud of me. I tried to course correct, pushed meetings to later in the day, skipped my weekly check-in with the warehouse manager so I could go to her friend's wine tasting. But the tone had already shifted. I was a ghost in our house. Not absent physically, just background noise. The first real crack came one Sunday morning. I was working on the couch, finalizing some invoices, when she walked in wearing a new dress, black, low cut, nothing subtle about it, and asked if I liked it. I said, "Of course, you look amazing," barely glancing up. She paused, arms folded. "You didn't even really look." I did then, properly. "You're stunning, Tess." Seriously. She forced a smile, but didn't say anything. Just grabbed her purse and left. No mention of where she was going. That night, she came back late. Smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. Said she went for drinks with Megan, her co-worker. I wanted to believe her. So I did. Looking back now, there were a dozen little signs I chose to ignore. The sudden interest in late-night yoga. The phone she started turning face down on the table. The work retreats on weekends that didn't add up because I knew for a fact her company didn't do retreats. Once, I asked her point-blank if she was seeing someone else. She laughed. Laughed like it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever said. "Alex, if I wanted to cheat, don't you think I'd at least pick someone who wasn't broke from building a delivery empire?" That one stung. She was joking, at least, I think she was, but it stuck with me. Made me look at her differently. Made me start checking timestamps. Locations. Smiles that didn't reach her eyes. But I kept pushing through. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Every couple hits one eventually, right? Besides, I had bigger things to focus on. My company had finally landed a contract with a regional grocery chain. That deal alone was going to pay off our mortgage, and then some. I was too close to let it slip. When I told her the news, she barely looked up from her phone. "Cool," she said, scrolling through her messages. "Does that mean you'll finally have time to take me to Lake Tahoe like you promised 2 years ago?" I told her I'd book something next month. She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, next month. Always next month with you." That night, I stood outside our bedroom door listening to her whisper on the phone. Not laughing, not giggling, just murmurs. Gentle, like she was comforting someone. Or being comforted. I didn't open the door. I just went downstairs and sat in the dark, thinking about my dad's advice again. How you treat your work like it's your reputation. And how maybe I'd spent so much time building mine that I forgot to notice someone else was busy destroying theirs behind my back. The next morning, she was already gone. Said she had a team hike for work. I didn't ask questions. Just packed my laptop and headed to the office. But something gnawed at me all day. A knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. And that was the day I decided to check the home security logs. Not the cameras, she knew where those were, but the smart lock system we installed when we first moved in. It tracked every time the front door was opened, and by which user. Turns out, Tessa had been letting herself out of the house on Saturday mornings around 10 a.m., always after I'd leave for the warehouse. And she'd come back around 8 p.m. Consistently, every weekend for the past month and a half. I cross-referenced those dates with the calendar she left on the fridge. According to her, those Saturdays were booked with work events. All of them. Corporate brunches, volunteer days, strategic planning offsites. My stomach dropped. I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at the data. No faces, no names, just digital breadcrumbs that pointed to one truth I didn't want to see. I needed confirmation. I wasn't going to accuse her again without evidence. But deep down, I think I already knew. I just didn't know how much it would hurt once I found out what she'd really been doing those weekends. Or who she'd been doing it with. And when I finally did, I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't even ask her why. I just reached into the drawer of my home office, pulled out the prenup addendum she'd signed 6 months ago, and set it gently on the kitchen counter. She'd laughed when I first asked her to sign it. Said I was paranoid. That we were solid. That she'd never betray me. But she signed it anyway. Because she never thought I'd catch her. I waited 3 days before saying anything. Not out of cowardice, at least, that's what I told myself, but because I wanted to be calm. Precise. There's a difference between reacting and responding, and I wasn't going to give Tessa the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. I needed to be sure. I needed to know exactly what she was doing with my Saturdays. So that week, I paid a visit to an old friend from college, Danny, who worked for a private investigations firm uptown. We weren't close, but close enough that he owed me a favor. I didn't go in asking for dirt. Just timelines. Patterns. I wanted truth, not ammunition. Danny didn't ask many questions. He saw the look in my eyes and just nodded. You'll have something by the weekend, he said. Stay busy until then. Staying busy was the easy part. My business was scaling fast, faster than I anticipated. But for the first time, I couldn't enjoy it. The same screens and spreadsheets that used to make me feel grounded now felt like distractions from a slow-burning fuse in the walls of my own home. I'd catch myself staring off mid-email, replaying conversations with Tessa from months ago, trying to spot the moment she'd stopped choosing me. Was it when I missed her cousin's engagement dinner to meet with a supplier from Cincinnati? Or when I told her I didn't want to go to Bali for her best friend's wedding because it was 2 weeks before our product launch? Maybe it wasn't a moment. Maybe it was a slow accumulation, like rust creeping along a steel beam, quiet, corrosive, invisible until something finally breaks. Friday came. Tessa was already talking about her retreat that weekend. She asked if I could pick up groceries before she left. I said sure. She kissed my cheek and went back to texting someone she wouldn't name. I noticed her password had changed. The next day, Danny texted, "Meet me. You're going to want to sit down." I drove to his office, heart pounding, palms clammy despite the cold air. He didn't sugarcoat it. Just dropped a file in front of me like it weighed 100 pounds. Her name's Sienna, he said, flipping the folder open. They've been meeting at the same place 3 blocks from your house. A rental property, Airbnb. Booked every Saturday under a fake name. Here's the reservation history. I stared at the printout. Same listing, different aliases. All paid through gift cards. No paper trail. Except there was. Danny was good at what he did. Too good. There were photos, too. Tessa, in that same black dress, walking up to the house with a man I didn't recognize at first. Tall, messy hair, lean build. Something about him felt vaguely familiar. Then Danny slid another photo forward. Him, shirtless, arm around her waist. Her laughing, leaning into him, like they were the ones married. I felt the air leave my lungs. Like someone had sucker punched me from behind. That's Marcus, I muttered. Danny raised an eyebrow. You know him? He used to work with me, I said, still staring. In turn, 2 years ago, I helped him get a job at a logistics firm across town. We grabbed drinks once. Danny was silent. I didn't say anything for a long time. Just sat there, hands clenched. Not angry yet, just hollow. Like my body hadn't caught up to the betrayal. Like it was buffering. I went home and said nothing. Tessa came back around 9 p.m. that night. Said the retreat ended early. She smelled like hotel soap and red wine. I asked how it went. She said, productive. And that was that. I slept in the guest room that night. Said I needed to be up early for inventory checks. She didn't press it, but I knew. And now I couldn't unknow it. The next week was the worst of my life. She kept doing it. Like clockwork. Every Saturday, I'd leave for the office, pretending like I hadn't seen the pictures. She'd head to yoga or wellness events and come back with stories that sounded like bad improv. I started documenting it. Not because I needed more proof, but because I needed the anger to build. I needed to feel it fully before I acted. Otherwise, I'd crack. I'd scream. And screaming meant weakness. She was different now, too. Sharper. Colder. Like the more I drifted emotionally, the more she leaned into control. She started criticizing my clothes, my food choices, my sleep schedule. You really think that shirt fits you? You're not 25 anymore. Do you even care about what you put in your body? God, Alex, you've become so robotic. You don't even laugh anymore. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell her that being cheated on tends to kill your sense of humor. But I bit my tongue. Then, one night, she crossed a line I hadn't prepared for. It was a Wednesday. I'd just gotten home from a supplier dinner, and she was waiting on the couch, wine glass in hand, eyes glassy. Her voice was slow and deliberate, tipsy but not drunk. I've been thinking, she said. Maybe we should sell the house. Start fresh. Somewhere warmer. Maybe Miami. I froze. Why would we sell the house? She smiled. The kind of smile that says she knows something you don't. It's just, this place doesn't feel like home anymore. Does it? I didn't respond. She tilted her head. You work all the time. I'm always alone here. Feels like a museum. Maybe we cash out and figure out who we are again. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just having an affair. She was testing the waters. Trying to see if I'd bend. If I'd agree to liquidate the one asset that still tied us together, and then what? She'd ride off with half, disappear into a new life with Marcus? Not happening. Still, I didn't take the bait. I said I'd think about it. That seemed to satisfy her. But it wasn't just the affair anymore. It was the gaslighting, the manipulation, the way she'd twist the blade every time I tried to breathe. One night, I was brushing my teeth and noticed she'd changed the family photo in the hallway. Used to be one of us at our wedding. Now it was a solo shot of her in a white dress on a boat somewhere I'd never been. Just her. No ring. I stared at it for a long time. She was erasing me, piece by piece, prepping the stage for her next act. And still, she acted like nothing was wrong. Like she was the wounded one. Like I was the absentee husband and she was just surviving. Then came the birthday dinner. Mine. I hadn't planned anything. Didn't really want to. I'd assumed Tessa would at least acknowledge it. Maybe cook something or drag me out to a restaurant. But when I walked in that evening, she was already dressed in heels, hair curled, perfume thick in the air. Happy birthday, she said, pecking my cheek. I'm heading out. I blinked. Out? Where? She hesitated for half a second, just enough to register. Megan's having a rough night. Girl stuff. I promised I'd be there. I looked at her. Really looked. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't ask. I just nodded. Of course. She smiled. You're the best. And just like that, she was gone. I stood in the hallway, staring at the empty space where our photo used to hang. The silence in the house felt heavier than it ever had before. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and a slice of stale banana bread I found in the fridge. Happy birthday to me. That night, I made a decision. This wasn't a rough patch. This wasn't a communication breakdown. This was war. And if she wanted to treat me like a stepping stone on her way to Marcus, then fine. I'd let her climb. I'd let her gloat. And then I'd make sure the ground disappeared beneath her the second she thought she'd reached the top. I started putting things in motion the next morning. Quietly. Methodically. The prenup addendum she'd signed was airtight. But I needed to make sure every part of the exit plan was locked. I met with my lawyer, Jane, a firecracker of a woman who'd handled my business incorporation and knew every inch of our marital agreements. She'd warned me when I first brought up the idea of adding a fidelity clause. Alex, most people don't think they'll need this kind of thing until they do. If she signs it, you hold the cards. And I did. She'd signed it without reading the fine print. Said she trusted me. That trust would be her undoing. But first, I had to let the final betrayal play out. Let her lie one more time. Let her laugh behind my back. Let her say something she couldn't take back. It was strange, really, how the worst betrayal didn't even hurt as much as I expected. By the time I reached the bottom, I wasn't broken. Just done. The heartbreak had already happened in slow motion, like a slow leak that drains the tank drop by drop until you realize you've been running on fumes for months. I didn't feel the dramatic collapse you see in movies. No shouting into the void. No smashing glasses or punching walls. I just woke up one morning, stared at the ceiling of the guest room I'd been quietly sleeping in for a week, and realized I didn't miss her anymore. I missed the idea of her, of us, of what I thought we had. But her? The version that stood in front of me now, wrapped in new perfume and cold silences, wasn't the woman I fell in love with. She was someone else. Someone who looked through me like I was a stranger wearing her husband's face. I hit rock bottom the following weekend. I hadn't told anyone what was happening, not even my closest friends. I was ashamed, honestly. Ashamed that I hadn't seen it. Ashamed that I'd been so wrapped up in building my company that I'd missed the slow unraveling of my marriage. But shame festers in silence, and eventually it has nowhere to go but out. It was Sunday afternoon, and I'd been sitting on the floor of my office for hours, surrounded by files and contract copies. I hadn't eaten, barely slept. The house was empty again. Tessa was shopping for art with Megan. At least that's what she texted. She didn't bother adding a smiley face this time. I found myself scrolling through my phone, pausing on photos from our first year together. Lazy beach days, hotel breakfasts, selfies at gas stations with coffee cups and crumpled maps. I didn't cry. I just stared, like I was looking at someone else's life. Someone who still believed people didn't change. Then my phone buzzed. It was a delivery confirmation. A bouquet. Dozen white orchids. Sent to our address. But addressed to Tess. From Marcus. No message. No card. Just his name. And that, somehow, was the moment that snapped the last thread. Not the affair. Not the lies. The audacity of sending flowers to my house. I stared at the message, then slowly stood up. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I tried to pour a glass of water and spilled half of it on the counter. My hands weren't trembling out of heartbreak anymore. This was something else. Something cleaner. Resolve. That night, I opened a blank Google Doc and started planning. Not revenge, strategy. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront. I wasn't going to beg her to stay or ask why she'd left me in all but name. I was going to quietly, methodically take back every inch of myself that I'd given away. First, I doubled down at work. My co-founder, Maya, noticed the shift instantly. "You okay?" she asked over lunch on Monday. "You look like you're running a silent war." "I am," I said. She didn't ask further. Just nodded and said, "Good. Let me know who I need to fire." We laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in weeks. That same week, I moved my main operations into a new warehouse space I'd been eyeing for months, but hadn't pulled the trigger on. It was bigger, more efficient, closer to the freeway. I signed the lease on the spot, brought coffee and pizza for the whole team. Told them this was the start of something new. I didn't mention what was going on at home. That wasn't their burden. But they noticed. I was sharper, faster, more focused than I'd been in a year. The quiet storm brewing in my chest had turned into momentum, and it showed. I started waking up at 5 a.m. again. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. There was something grounding about beating the sun to the punch, about reclaiming the rhythm of my own life. And little by little, I started building myself back, not the version that existed inside the marriage, but the version I'd lost somewhere between "I do" and "I don't recognize you anymore." I started going back to the gym. Nothing crazy, just a slow return to the routines I'd abandoned. I dusted off my old record player, started cooking again, made a rule that I wouldn't touch work after 8 p.m. Even when Tessa was home, which was rarely, I made space for me. She noticed. Of course she did. One night, she walked into the kitchen while I was sautéing garlic and said, "You've been different lately." "Yeah," I said. "I feel better." She tilted her head. "That's good, I guess." There was tension in her voice, like she wasn't sure whether to be impressed or annoyed. I didn't offer her any. I plated my dinner, sat down, and ate alone. And then things started shifting. She stopped asking where I was going, stopped offering details about where she was going, stopped pretending to be affectionate. The performance ended, and in its place was something colder, emptier, like she knew the curtain had dropped, and she didn't care to bow. At night, she'd stay in the living room with her laptop, headphones on, pretending to watch shows she never finished. I'd hear her laugh sometimes, quietly, not the loud, full laugh she used to have with me. This one was softer, almost secretive, and I let her have it, because I wasn't playing that role anymore. One morning, she asked if I'd seen her charger. I said no. She stared at me for a moment, then asked, "Are we okay?" I shrugged. "Depends what you mean by okay." She didn't press, just walked out with her half-empty coffee. And that's when I knew she could feel it. The distance. The quiet detachment. She thought she'd left me behind emotionally months ago. But now she was watching me walk away from her. And I wasn't even looking back. I was building a new identity, one that didn't orbit around her moods or need her approval. At work, things were exploding in the best way. Our new warehouse setup cut delivery times by 20%. We landed a contract with a national furniture brand. I was flying out to Chicago for a trade show and ended up on a panel discussion about lean distribution systems. People were taking notes, asking questions, treating me like an expert. And for the first time in a long time, I felt it too. I was the expert. I'd built something real, and I'd done it while navigating a slow emotional collapse back home. Then came the night she brought Marcus into our house. I hadn't expected that. She didn't even try to sneak him in. That was the most insulting part. It was a Thursday, about a week after my panel in Chicago, and I got home earlier than usual. I'd skipped the post-meeting drinks with the sales team, craving nothing more than a long shower and a night of actual silence. Not the kind that filled the house like smoke, but the kind you choose. The kind that feels like peace. I pulled into the driveway and immediately saw the unfamiliar Audi parked out front. Sleek. Leased. New plates. I knew the brand. Marcus always wanted to be seen as a high performer. Flashy watch. Flashier business cards. Thought that throwing money at things made him look like he had taste. I killed the engine and just sat there for a moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel, absorbing the weight of it. I didn't feel panic or heartbreak, just a tight, cold knot in my chest. She brought him here, to my home, to the house I paid for, the mortgage in my name, the one I renovated top to bottom while she was too tired to help pick tile samples, but somehow found energy to schedule back-to-back wine nights with friends. I walked inside like I owned the place. Because I did. And there they were. Tessa was leaning against the kitchen island, sipping wine out of the glass I bought her from that artisan shop in Mendocino. The one she used to say made every drink feel like a spa day. And across from her, perched on one of my leather stools, was Marcus, wearing a smug little smirk and a navy blazer that still had the tag string poking out near the wrist. The moment his eyes met mine, that smirk faltered just slightly. He wasn't expecting me. Tessa, on the other hand, didn't flinch. She turned and gave me that same faux casual smile she always used when she wanted to seem unbothered. "Oh hey, babe. You're home early." Babe. She actually said it like this was just normal. Like she wasn't playing house with another man in the middle of my life. I set my keys down slowly on the counter. Didn't realize we had company. Marcus cleared his throat and stood up, straightening his blazer like we were old buddies bumping into each other at a mutual friend's party. "Alex. Long time." I nodded. "Not long enough." He chuckled awkwardly. "We were just talking about." "I'm not interested." I cut in, looking at Tessa. "You couldn't even wait until the ink was dry?" She had the audacity to scoff. "Oh please. Don't pretend you've been emotionally present. You checked out months ago." That was her new favorite line. "You were never really here." As if physical presence meant nothing. As if paying the bills, fixing the pipes, taking care of the taxes, booking the flights, picking up her skincare prescriptions, none of it counted. Because I didn't send enough heart emojis in the middle of inventory day. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. Probably didn't expect her to play the martyr card so early. I turned to him. "You're aware she's still legally married, right?" He stiffened. "I thought you two were." "She's still on the deed. Still on the joint account. Still wearing the ring she said she lost 2 months ago." I looked down. Sure enough, the diamond glinted faintly under the kitchen light. He looked at her. "You said, 'Can you give us a second, Marcus?'" she snapped, suddenly flustered. And for the first time, he didn't obey. Just stood there awkwardly, like a dog waiting to be told it was okay to run off leash. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Eventually, he mumbled something about waiting outside and slipped out the front door. Tessa whirled on me. That was unnecessary. I stared at her. Bringing him here was unnecessary. She rolled her eyes. "I didn't think you'd be back. And honestly, I'm tired of hiding it. And I'm tired of pretending to care." That stopped her. Just for a second. And then she crossed her arms. "What exactly do you want from me, Alex?" An apology? No, I said, turning to walk away. I want a divorce. And that was it. I didn't wait for a reaction. Didn't linger for a reply. I just grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and walked straight upstairs, heart pounding, face numb, mind already racing through the next steps. Because while Tessa thought she was finally in control, finally making her big dramatic exit, I had already begun laying the groundwork weeks ago. And now, it was time to turn the screws. The very next day, I had a meeting with Jane, my lawyer. We went over everything, again. The prenup. The addendum she signed 6 months before we moved into the house, back when I was considering turning the guest room into a home office and wanted to formalize property ownership, just in case. Tessa had laughed when I asked her to sign it. You think I'm going to run off with the ottoman and your warehouse forklifts? She'd rolled her eyes, sipped her oat milk latte, and signed without reading. Trust, she said. That signature was going to cost her everything. Because buried in that addendum, drafted in plain but potent language, was a fidelity clause. A single paragraph that transferred full ownership of the house to me if either party engaged in infidelity during the marriage. She had broken the contract. And now, legally, the house was mine. But I wasn't going to kick her out just yet. Not before she buried herself deeper. Because here's the thing. People like Tessa, when they think they've won, they get sloppy. They get bold. They start showing off. So I waited. Over the next 2 weeks, I played it cool. Detached. Polite. I didn't move out. Didn't argue. Didn't even sleep anywhere new. I was always just coming home late from work and leaving early. Like always. Except now, I was watching. Listening. Gathering. Tessa, feeling invincible, started letting her guard down. She stopped sneaking around. Marcus started spending the night. I could hear his voice downstairs sometimes, laughing like he'd already moved in. I started documenting everything. Dates. Times. Security cam footage from the front door. Her voice on speakerphone saying things like, Alex is so emotionally dead, I could bring a marching band in here, and he wouldn't notice. That one made me laugh out loud. Because I had noticed. I was just too busy loading the cannon. Meanwhile, I met with my financial advisor. Separated my business assets formally. Transferred all personal funds into a trust. Cut off the joint credit card. Quietly froze any auto-pay bills she'd set up for her wellness purchases. She didn't even realize until her $400 hair appointment got declined. She came storming into my office that night. Why is the card frozen? I didn't even look up from my laptop. Had to tighten up some finances. You understand. I had an appointment. I'm sure Marcus can spot you. She turned red. You're such a child. I smiled. No. I'm the guy who paid the mortgage while you were on vacation with someone else's budget. She stormed off. And that night, I pulled the final thread. I scheduled a delivery for a single suitcase. Her suitcase. Packed neatly, thoughtfully. All her essentials. Just enough to get her through a weekend. And right on top, a copy of the prenup addendum. Highlighted. Signed. And paper-clipped to a letter from Jane, officially transferring ownership of the house into my name and informing her that she had 30 days to vacate. The final blow? The letter was delivered while Marcus was still in the shower. She opened it in the foyer. I watched from the top of the stairs. And when she looked up, stunned, pale, jaw clenched around a scream she didn't know how to let out, I just nodded once. Not a smirk. Not a gloat. Just a quiet, steady nod. The kind you give when someone's finally realized they were never holding the cards. The silence in the foyer was so loud, it was almost peaceful. Tessa stood there frozen, suitcase still halfway unzipped, Marcus's voice echoing faintly from upstairs as he sang something off-key in the shower. The letter dangled in her hand, the signature, the one she gave so casually months ago, now burning a hole through her future. Alex, she finally said, voice shaky. What is this? I took my time walking down the stairs, paused at the landing, looked her in the eye. It's the prenup addendum, the one you signed before we moved in. Her eyes flicked down to the page, to the highlighted paragraph. Clause 7. Fidelity and property reallocation. If either party engages in infidelity during the course of the marriage, full legal ownership of the shared residential property will transfer to the other party, effective immediately upon confirmation of breach. She read it again. And again. I didn't, she started. I cut her off. You did. There are cameras. Time logs. Screenshots. Footage. Your voice. His voice. It's all documented. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. But we were already basically separated. I raised an eyebrow. You were still sleeping in the master bedroom, eating from my fridge, using the house as your personal spa, and, until 2 weeks ago, charging weekly brunches to our joint card. We weren't separated. You were coasting. Her face twisted. You can't do this. Oh, I can. And I have. The paperwork is filed. The title is already updated. You'll find that your name no longer appears on anything that matters. She blinked at me, stunned. You've got 30 days to find a new place, I continued. Legally, I only needed to give you 7. I gave you 30. I'm not heartless. The look she gave me was a cocktail of disbelief, rage, and dawning panic. You're punishing me. I nodded, slow and deliberate. I'm holding you accountable. And just like that, the mask slipped. She dropped the letter and stormed toward the staircase. Marcus, she yelled. Get out of the shower. He came stumbling out 10 seconds later, towel wrapped around his waist, confused and wet, and very much in the wrong place at the wrong time. Tessa turned to him, voice shrill. We need to go? Now. Marcus looked at me, then back at her. What's going on? She shoved the prenup into his chest. He's kicking me out. Marcus tried to process it. Wait, how? I thought you said. Just get dressed. I didn't stay for the show. I walked out to the backyard and sat under the pergola I built with my own hands 2 summers ago, when things still felt worth saving. I could hear them arguing through the open windows. Could hear drawers slamming and feet stomping. But it all sounded distant. Muted. Like the last few minutes of a movie you've already seen. They left that night. She didn't wait 30 days. Not even 3. By the next morning, her side of the closet was empty. The vanity cleared. Her Instagram was wiped clean of any photos of us. The captions changed from forever to new beginnings. She posted a photo of a latte and a suitcase with a vague quote. Sometimes the storm isn't sent to destroy you. Sometimes it clears your path. Sure, whatever helps you sleep, I thought. But the thing is, storms don't clear paths. They reveal who built their foundation to last, and who was always standing on sand. Tessa moved into a short-term rental with Marcus. At least, that's what I heard through mutuals. I didn't check. Didn't care. I didn't block her. I just muted her across every platform, like turning down a song that used to mean something, but now only grates. Within 3 months, they'd broken up. Marcus wasn't built for real life. He liked the thrill of sneaking around, the drama of forbidden flings. But moving in with a woman you helped dismantle her own marriage? That's a different game. Reality has a way of draining the fantasy out of a relationship. Apparently, he lost interest fast. Ghosted her for a week. Then she found out he was texting someone from his new job. Some intern. Irony writes better punchlines than I ever could. She showed up at my warehouse one afternoon in May. Unannounced. Sunglasses too big for her face. Thin sweater, even though it was warm out. She looked tired. Brittle. Like someone who hadn't been sleeping much. My assistant didn't recognize her and buzzed her in. Alex, she said, standing in the middle of my office like a lost child. Can we talk? I stared at her. There's nothing to talk about. She pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. I made a mistake. No, I said, calm and steady. You made a series of choices. She didn't deny it. Just looked down at her shoes. I miss us. No, you miss the stability. The house. The security. The man who paid for brunch and oil changes and never asked questions when you needed space. I leaned back in my chair. But the man who gave you all that? He doesn't live here anymore. She swallowed hard. I lost everything. I shrugged. You bet everything on Marcus. And he folded. I thought that I'd always be here, that I'd just keep absorbing it. Smiling. Funding your exit strategy. Silence. I stood up and walked around the desk. Let me be clear, Tessa. I don't hate you. I don't wish you pain. But I also don't owe you comfort anymore. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move. I didn't reach for tissues. I let her feel it. She left without another word. A week later, the final divorce documents were signed. No alimony. No property splits. No emotional drama. Just ink on paper and silence between us. And me? I kept building. I hired 2 new managers. Expanded to a second distribution center. Got featured in a trade magazine under Entrepreneurs to Watch. I started dating again, not because I needed someone, but because I finally felt whole on my own. And the house. It's quieter now. Peaceful. There's a record player in the living room again. A hammock in the backyard. Sometimes, I sit out there at night with a glass of bourbon and watch the stars and think about how far I've come. Not from heartbreak, from forgetting myself. Tessa didn't ruin my life. She reminded me to protect it better. And now? Now I guard it like a man who knows exactly what his time is worth. Because the truth is, you can lose the woman. You can lose the house, the comfort, the illusion. But if you keep your name, your mind, your spine, you never lose. You just start again, smarter, sharper, and absolutely untouchable. And in the end, when all the noise dies down, and everyone who underestimated you fades into the background, there's only one thing left to say. Welcome home.